last night. Thank you for your work yesterday. I want to just say thank you so much to everyone, and I hope our day is blessed today. Okay, and thank you to the clerks and everyone here that keeps us together. Will the doorkeepers please close the doors? There's a little bit of a delay in the transmission, so we have to give them 30 more seconds, okay? Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you. Twenty more seconds. Can clear our minds, right? All right, we're going to get started. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The prayer this morning will be offered by the wonderful delegate from Prince George's County. Let us bow our heads.
Gracious God, we come to you this morning first and foremost to say thank you. Thank you for life, for health, and for strength. Thank you for your grace and for your mercy. This morning, our prayer, God, is that you would be blessed by our behavior today. God, that your love would be manifested in our minds, in our mouths, in our motives, in our mission. In your great name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Give people a minute to reach their seats. Anyone else in the back? One more person? Okay. All right. Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. There being 125 members present, the House is now in session. The clerk will read the journal from the previous day.
August the 3rd, 2026, Annapolis, Maryland.
Recognizing the Deputy Majority Leader. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone, and Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the journal.
So order petitions, memorials, and other papers. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. There being 126 members present, the House is still in session. House third reading calendar, number 149. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 2101, Arbitration Reform for State Employees Act of 2026, withdrawal and repeal of duplicate proposed constitutional amendment.
House Bill 2101 is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 90 votes in the affirmative and 34 votes in the negative, House Bill 2101, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk, 1 second. Right. House third reading calendar, number 150. The clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 2100, Election Districts, General Assembly, and Representatives in Congress.
House Bill 2100 is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate?
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the young lady from Hartford County. Good morning.
Good morning, body. What can I say about this? I have so many thoughts. We had a lot of debate yesterday. I appreciate it. I thought it was very lively, considering how late it ran. Could have gone later, I think. I had a few extra amendments, so you're lucky that it was called. I'm disappointed. I think I speak on behalf of my entire district and community that we're disappointed. We're disappointed in the fact that we are constantly lectured down here on how we need to be civil and loving and considerate of others' opinions and their needs, and everybody deserves representation and everybody wants their voices to be heard. And it's just not real. It's not real. It's what I tell my children when I want them to stop fighting with me about something that I've already said no to. It's disrespectful. This is just an attack on my community. It's an effort to silence our voices, to make it so that we feel even more unwelcome, out of place, unseen, and unheard here in the state of Maryland, which honestly I didn't know that you guys could do a better job of, since you've already done quite a job of it since I've lived here. So I'm embarrassed for us. A lot of times I tease us on the floor for being the JV League, for not thinking through the policies we put forward, because in the end, a lot of them get enjoined. A lot of them make us the laughing stock of the nation. And I don't know if this will make us the laughing stock. This one's a little more serious for me. This isn't condoms in preschools or tampons in men's bathrooms. This one's personal for a lot of us, not just because we know and love Congressman Andy Harris, but because we know and love our constituents who deserve to have representation. And for a second, I'll just admonish you, as I love to. This is a risk for you all as well. You might be excited to see a new Democrat in Congress representing the state of Maryland, but you know who's not going to be real excited about this decision? Yeah, the president. The president's not going to be real excited to see a new Democrat in an 8-0 state. So I don't know who you intend to send down to the White House to negotiate on your behalf, especially in a state where the vast majority of the struggle financially we've been having, according to you guys, is because we're so reliant on the federal government. And so now we're about to make it even harder for us to negotiate with the White House. Don't call me. I'm not going down there. I'm not going down there. So I don't know who you're going to get if you try and get rid of Andy. But I'll be praying for you guys, and I'll be looking for a second home in West Virginia.
Madam
God
Speaker.
bless.
Madam Speaker.
Yeah, recognizing the gentleman from Anne Arundel, then the gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam
My
Speaker.
pleasure.
Yesterday, I sat on the committee and heard this bill, and I heard several things, clarity, and one of the things we hear in national news all the time is we got to do this to save our democracy. Well, the word democracy isn't in the Constitution. It's not in the Declaration of Independence. In fact, we just all pledge allegiance. Do we pledge allegiance to our democracy? No, we pledge allegiance to our republic, because our founding fathers realized how dangerous a true democracy is, where majority rules. It's like two wolves and a sheep deciding what they should have for dinner. That's dangerous. If we let majority rule, we hear a lot about minority in here, and I agree. Minorities should be represented, because 51% of anything can be very, very dangerous. Matter of fact, majority rule is as dangerous as one king. So we must remember why we are a representative republic that elects its officials through a democratic process. And I'm deeply concerned that we're going to have 2 million, when you count independents, Marylanders with zero representation and majority rules. Democracies have never survived in world history because as the founding fathers realized, human nature and mob rule ends in destruction. We need representatives, and we are deeply concerned. I don't negate your concerns. I understand you are moving from an emotional spot, and you feel like you're going to save mass suffering, as I heard yesterday, that this is a nightmare. I understand. I don't question what you feel or what you see or what you interpret. But sometimes when we act out of emotion and we're reactive, the result we get is not anything like we imagined. Think about that. Think about if you did it at home with majority, or if we did everything by majority rule. The majority tells you what to drive. The majority tells you what you can do. The majority tells you what kind of house you can have. That's not a good place to run a government. In fact, it's scary as hell. And that's what we're trying to drive here in the state of Maryland. You've had the majority since 1922. We have people in this state that are begging to be represented, and as that slips away, so does our republic. And that's why we are the fourth highest migrated state out in the country. We have people that say, I don't have a voice in Annapolis. Well, now they won't have a voice in D.C. either. I beg of you to think about what we're doing here. We are a representative republic. We are not a pure democracy. And that's why I'm going to be voting against this. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. Recognizing the gentleman from Baltimore County, then the majority leader. I'm sorry, Eastern Shore. Forgive
Thank you,
me.
Madam Speaker, and I'm going to work very hard to not get close to Bobby and Sergeant at Arms and say what needs to be said without getting in trouble. You caught me by attention yesterday when you said it, and I thought to myself, what would it take for somebody like me to say a thing that gets me removed from the House floor?
As long as you just stay right there, not come to the aisle and confront someone else, we're good. We're cool.
We're cool.
Yes.
We'll be cool. I've been here for 12 years now, and I've enjoyed every single minute of it. I'm the chairman of the Eastern Shore delegation, have been for 4 years, and it's unfortunate that I will end my 4-year tenure having to discuss a subject which is basically a local bill. This is a bill that affects us, and specifically us. If it affected your counties, Prince George's, Baltimore City, and we as a minority party were doing something and acting in a way not far removed from what you're doing today, you would expect people like you to say, no, this is our county, this is our region, and we like very much how we're being represented. Please leave us alone. Well, that's what we're saying as members of the Eastern Shore. We had a vote this morning. It was unanimous in nature. It was saying that we, as a region, like the fact that we have a representative that is rural in nature. Look, Madam Speaker, national politics being what they are, oftentimes it's Republican versus Democrat. Let me just grant you an alternative viewpoint on this from my 12 years in office. What I have said in public, and I've said on the House floor, is that it's often urban versus rural. And I don't mean fistfight urban versus rural. What I'm saying is that the rural parts of our state do things differently, believe some things differently, and act differently than folks that are from the urban parts of our state. These aren't subjects of political tangle and fight and tug of war. These are subjects of education. Help us understand where you're coming from Tacoma Park. Help us understand how you feel about issues from Baltimore City. But in turn, we want you to understand how we feel about the Eastern Shore. What I would say is whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent from the Eastern Shore, you like self-determination. We like our independence. And we like to vote for fighters and scrappers who in this state of Maryland, a little bit of it is required in a state where we have a disadvantage of 2-to-1 Republican versus Democrat when we show up at the polls. What I'm saying to you, if I'm saying nothing else, is that this bill, being a local bill, has never been asked of any member of the Eastern Shore delegation how we feel about the subject, how we feel about this bill, and frankly, none of the amendments were adopted that may very well have been constructive through the lens of what will a district map look like in the future. Rather, this bill comes in the form of a special session, an abbreviated bill hearing, lack of some due process, which I was quiet yesterday. I wanted to listen to what was going on, but one of the most difficult things for me to swallow, notwithstanding that politics is power, and if you have the power, you use it, is that you were willing to amend this bill, make it such that we were going to eliminate fundamental responsibilities of the legislature to do certain things before you put a ballot question on for November. And I found that very distasteful. The Eastern Shore in this 1st Congressional District has been represented by Democrats in the past, Frank Cradaville being one of them. Now, this is before I got involved in politics, but on occasion, I would show up at a meeting. These were normally business meetings, maybe NFIB meetings, where the congressman at the time, for only 2 years, by the way, would come through on the Eastern Shore and talk about issues of Washington to business community members from the Eastern Shore. Those are farmers, watermen, of course I'm in retail, listening to what a perspective from a Democrat is. And let me just say, somebody who has a Democrat perspective who comes from Washington and speaks to folks from the Eastern Shore are going to have some natural difficulties. And Frank Cradaville, the congressman at the time, did have some difficulties because at the time we were voting on Obamacare, we were going through the mortgage-backed security crisis. Many of the votes that he took at the time were not consistent with what an Eastern Shore congressional representative can and should be voting for. And on those occasions where he broke ranks with his own party and voted with the conservative principles in Washington, it was not viewed authentic, but it was rather viewed through the lens of, I've got to vote this way so I can win my election. Most people on the Eastern Shore understood exactly what that looks like, can read through the nonverbal voting efforts that relate to trying to get reelected in a conservative part of the state as a Democrat, and they voted Andy Harris in. And when they voted Andy Harris in, it wasn't just by 1 or 2%. Frank Cradaville won by 1%. Andy Harris won by 12% because he was an authentic, realistic, pragmatic fighter for Eastern Shore values. He got elected by people from Somerset County through to Cecil County, Baltimore County. He was elected because he was able to reflect Eastern Shore values. And I'd proffer to you, Speaker, that in this bill, what is being attempted is at least a discussion as to how we marginalize further Eastern Shore votes such that we have similar elected officials like Frank Cradaville that have a very difficult time communicating an Eastern Shore message. Andy Harris can do that. I can tell you, for the years I've been in office, Andy's been our congressman. Look, he can talk to the waterman. He can talk to the farmer. He can talk to the small business person. He can certainly defend the interest of Ocean City. And he can do it in a way that people relate, and will, not only can they relate to Andy Harris, but they will vote for him again and again because he's authentic. He's not having to articulate a message he doesn't believe in. And whether you like it or not, that is how the Eastern Shore sees itself, and it's how it would like to see itself reflected in Washington, D.C. If this bill passes, and I expect that it will, what you're setting in motion is a tangle of some magnitude. Because now you're not saying, and I think on the floor you're saying, we just don't like what's going on in Washington, we don't like the president, we don't like the congressional representative in Maryland. The net effect of this bill, is to say that the citizens, the Republicans, the Democrats, the independents, are not going to be granted the ability to communicate through vote who they want to represent themselves in Washington, D.C. If people can't reconcile themselves that my vote matters, that my vote counts, and therefore collectively as a region that we can't get representation in the legislature in Washington, D.C., then that absolutely leads to apathy, voter rejection of the process, And that's dangerous. And it's not dangerous because, hey, look, we don't want to send the right message about mail-in voting, and we don't want to send the wrong message about how we're doing extended voting times. What I'm saying is that we are saying to the citizens that because we can gerrymander out a congressional representative, we really don't care how you vote. We really don't care. We just want what we want. We have the power, and we're going to use it. That's how this bill will be viewed by the folks from the Eastern Shore. As the chairman of the Eastern Shore, I'll close by saying a few things I've said by way of interview leading up to today. We, as a legislature, have so much power and responsibility. We have the ability to show up here during regular legislative session, during special session, to do what it is that we feel like we need to do to help Marylanders. And so in the rejection of some of these amendments yesterday, we rejected the idea that we could be here talking about the fact that a lady, a friend of mine who's from the Eastern Shore, that had a power bill of $800 this past month, $800, and was shocked by that amount of money. What's going on with my power bill? Why can't we fix what's going on here? We could be talking about what's happening in Ocean City. We have teen mob rule on the beaches of Ocean City without the ability of law enforcement to do what's required because we have made it difficult for law enforcement to do their job. We could be in special session talking about what is it that we did wrong or not, what can we do better as a legislative body to help areas of our region where youth violence is increasing, where youth are finding that there are no boundaries, and that they're, at the moment, as we're sitting here today, trying to find out how far they can push until they hit some boundary. We could be here today talking about that. We could be here talking about the fact that we're going to show up next year with a $3 billion budget shortfall, and you know what? Maybe a special session would be worthy of sitting down and looking at where's spending today? Where's the Board of Revenue estimates? Should we be doing something now so we don't show up next year with a severe crisis that will lead to tax increases or lowering of service to our citizens? Those are the reasons that I believe we should be showing up in a special session, not talking about a local bill that affects citizens from my area. These are the topics that Marylanders, if you were to poll them, would say, this is what I would expect from this very powerful body in this moment. This is what this moment calls for. What this moment doesn't call for is a nuanced discussion about a ballot initiative that's coming up in November. I think it misses the mark, Madam Speaker. It misses the mark on so many different ways. But when we show up next year, after this is over and the vote's taken, what I will say to you is that we on the Eastern Shore will feel like something significant has happened, that something has changed. We're not angry. You know, I brought up the joke earlier about the sergeant at arms. We're not the folks that are going to cause a ruckus on the House floor. But something has changed, and it will affect us as a legislative region, how we conduct our business in fairness, because something like this doesn't get forgotten. We pass hundreds, if not thousands, of bills coming and going. This is one that I'm going to remember for the rest of my life because of why we're here, in the form that we're showing up here, on the subject we're talking about, and for that, there can be no easy reconciliation from my perspective. God bless this legislature. I hope you understand that if this was you in your region doing the same thing in the reverse, that you would have somebody like me as a leader of this representative body on the Eastern Shore delegation saying what I've got to say without getting in trouble. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I appreciate the comments. I'm probably going to remember this for the rest of my life, too. And I will remember that it was Donald Trump that got me about a year ago today to go on social media and say that Maryland needed to begin considering changes to its redistricting process based on the fact that Texas, twice in 3 decades, reopened their redistricting process mid-decade. And they did so with no other states getting involved and responding until they did. And we've been asked to stand down and watch as all of these states have slid through and done this. Now, I also appreciate the comments about the congressman who represents the Eastern Shore at the moment and the virtues you're singing. A little bit of history. I do believe that congressman was a representative of Baltimore County at the time that he took down the Democrat from the Eastern Shore. And so you are telling me that someone from Baltimore County can do a great job when their district also connects over the bridge into the Eastern Shore and represent the Eastern Shore. So it's a bit of interesting history that you think that someone from Baltimore County can represent the Eastern Shore well. So that's an interesting fact to note. But this is all distraction. Why? Because this bill has nothing to do with maps or the Eastern Shore. That is a future debate, future maps, future process, future decision. None of that has been decided, and I do believe people are of mixed minds as to when, if ever, we should entertain new maps for the mid-decade cycle that we are currently in. What I will say that this bill, if approved by the voters, will do, it's going to make Maryland equal to all of the other states, Texas, Alabama, Florida, North Carolina, California, Utah, Virginia, all of the states that have attempted redistricting changes in the last year or so. It would make us equal to them for all of the future redistrictings, all of them. And as I said, Texas did this in 2003. They did a mid-decade redistricting. They came back nearly 2 decades later. They did it again, popped it on us here. So I have every belief that the delegates, and we won't be here in 2060 or so, will be looking here and thinking about the mid-decade redistricting that Texas does in 2042, wondering what they should do. And they'll have a debate very similar to this. But mark my words, Texas will be back doing this one time again. In fact, after Texas did their 2026 redistricting, they thought maybe they didn't get enough seats out of it. And the governor started talking about maybe he needs to reopen redistricting one more time and go from +5R to +10R from that state. So this is absolutely in their permanent arsenal, and they believe mid-decade redistricting is something that can happen any year, at any time. So all of us sitting here under these rules, we would never even know who our constituents might be in the next election. This is absurd. But the minority leader has said it time and again. We're not going to solve these federal issues from one state like Maryland. And Maryland, at the moment, is in the minority nationally with parties. So we're certainly not going to solve this as the minority party nationally from one state in Maryland, while the other majority party states are going in the opposite direction. But again, this is not about the congressman from Baltimore County and his service record. It's not about that at all. There's no map involved here, and if anyone decides to entertain a new map, you will see a whole process and discussion involved, and I'm sure we'll see folks signing up to testify and a lot of ruckus about this. And if that map, should it do anything with, as you're suggesting, we'll have that discussion then. But this is about clarifying the state constitution. As I've said, the voters in the late 1960s in Maryland said no to the idea that the state constitution regulates congressional redistricting. They said no. The minority leader said, well, that's true, but the no was tucked in with a list of other no's. That's fine. You're a lawyer. It was a no. You said it's not. We agreed yesterday on the floor. It's not in the state constitution. The voters in a package declines to do it. Now, whether you like that that's how it was posed, I don't know what to tell you. That's how it was posed in the 60s. None of us were here, but it failed. And the subsequent constitutional amendments in the 70s were clearly saying that the state constitution's language applies to state delegates and state senators, not to Congress. That is all this bill does. It's not about Andy Harris. It's not about a map. It's simply clarifying a new confusion that I never thought about until Donald Trump went to Texas and asked them to find him 5 new votes in Congress. And I said, wait, what is this? We all scratched our heads. Does Maryland have mid-decade redistricting powers? It turns out that's existing law. We didn't know this. I didn't know any of this. So the idea that I sat here with a design to chop up the state, cause partisan ruckus, disenfranchise people, come on. I've never introduced a bill that looked like that, never. In fact, I signed on to pass independent redistricting bills. They were ones that we sought to collaborate with other states to convince Congress to pass independent redistricting. It was Delegate Resnick that had a bill like this in past years. I was a co-sponsor, so were some of the others in the room. So it is 100% not disingenuous when I say today, that is where the solution lies. Call your member of Congress. And if you're in the minority, call now.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the minority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
I'm extremely confused. Because if we're not going to do any maps as a result of this, then what are we doing here? This is the dumbest thing we've ever done. We passed a constitutional amendment disenfranchising rights, changing language that's existed for dozens, hundreds of years. And we don't know why. We're not going to do anything. We may not do anything. We're not going to do anything. I am not an idiot. People in this room are not idiots. We understand that the only reason to do this is to lay the table to prevent a legal challenge that prevented you the last time from doing something that you want to do this time. If you're not going to do it, then why are we having a special session? Why are we here not talking about affordability and taxes and fees and the disabled community and our budget problems? No, no, no. We're here for 2 days debating the niceties of the 1968 Constitutional Convention and legal cases on the single subject rule for something we're not going to do. Baloney. You're going to do it. And if you don't do it, you're really crazy. If you don't do it, then I wonder, like, who's running the show in this state? The governor wants to do it. The House wants to do it. The Senate didn't want to do it. Now they do want to do it. We don't know if we're going to do it. Do you guys wake up every day and just do what you do because of Donald Trump? Is he that much in control of your actions? If he says jump, you say dig. If he says the sky is blue, you say it is green. He is one man. He is not in charge of everything that you do for the rest of your lives. You are not a reactive group of individuals who react solely to his whims. I'm in his same political party, and I don't react solely to his whims. The man sometimes says things, and I shake my head, and I'm like, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. But I don't get up every day and think that my entire legislative existence is in response to something else. So if you tell us this is just an activity, it's just an activity, it's an academic exercise, we don't know what we're going to do, then you're foolish. And if the flip side is that you know you're going to change the maps, then don't tell those folks that sit over there, well, we're not going to change the maps. Don't tell the folks that sit from Harford County, well, we're not going to change the maps. You're going to change the maps. You proposed a map. We voted on a map 4 months ago. We saw what the map was. It may not be the exact same map. I suspect that there's some sitting members of Congress of the majority political party in this state who don't like that map very much because it doesn't suit their objectives perfectly. And after all, that's what this is all about. We have to suit the objectives of sitting elected officials perfectly. It's not about people. It's not about principles. It's about suit the objectives of those in power right now. Draw a line to make sure that they win and get what they want. But you had a map. You just had it. And it disenfranchised the Eastern Shore. Now, I'm a little less exercised about that. I have a lot of empathy for my friends from the Eastern Shore, Republican and Democrat, because there are Democrats that represent the Eastern Shore who will also be disenfranchised in their ability to select someone from their communities and someone who they think has a basis in their region from serving them in Congress. Democrats as well. I'm a little less vexed because we keep talking about Texas, and Trump. My goodness, Texas and Trump live in the minds of everyone in this body, Texas and Trump. Except for this, I live in Western Maryland. And for quite a long period of time, the member of Congress from the 6th District in Western Maryland resided in what we viewed in Western Maryland. For a good while, they were Democrats from Frederick County. actually from farming communities in Frederick County. They weren't downtown Frederick City folks, the Byrons, husband and wife and father. They had 2 generations and a husband and wife and mother. Forgot that part. Because the one individual unfortunately died, and his wife was briefly appointed to fill his seat. And then for a while, it was someone else from Frederick County. Before that, it was people from my county. Went back into the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. It was people from Allegheny County that represented the 6th District. And what did you do? You changed all of that. You didn't do a constitutional amendment to do that. You just changed it. You took Carroll County and for a while parts of Frederick County out of our area, and you put Montgomery County almost all the way to the D.C. line. Does anyone in the room know the last time that the 6th District was represented by someone who actually lived in the 6th District? It was 2012. It was 2012. Now, the Constitution says you don't have to be. I get it. When's the last time someone in the 8th District wasn't represented by someone from the 8th District? When's the last time Baltimore City was represented in Congress by someone who did not live in Baltimore City? When's the last time that Prince George's County, the primary Prince George's County district that's now held by the father of one of our beloved colleagues, see, you are beloved. When's the last time that district wasn't represented by someone who lived in Prince George's County? That someone interloped in from out of the district and said, well, I'm just going to spend a little money and I represent it because you guys don't really have the votes. Never. Never. So when you say that Texas started it, you started it. Not us. Most of us weren't here. A few of us might have been, Madam Speaker. You might recall that. I don't know. But most of us weren't here.
I plead the 5th.
Exactly. Much like former Governor O'Malley tried to. I appreciate that. At the end of the day, Maryland and other Democratic states lit the fire of partisan redistricting. You keep talking about Texas. Texas is a red state. It has voted red for every statewide election and every presidential election for decades now. Texas still has Democratic representatives. Under the map, the horrible, terrible, awful map we're discussing for Texas, they still carved out multiple areas that will almost assuredly be represented by Democrats. Florida, awful, terrible, horrible Florida. Florida now has a more than 1-point-something million Republican voter registration. If you are a Republican who lives on the East Coast, and believe me, I talk to a lot of them, everybody and their brother says, I'm moving to Florida. And that's what's happened the last 10 years. Florida used to be a swing state. Now Republicans have a supermajority in a variety of ways. Florida's awful, terrible, horrible map that they just drew still has plenty of Democratic districts. Still has many districts where Democrats are almost guaranteed to win. What are you going to do here? Eliminate us. What'd you do in Massachusetts? Massachusetts votes almost 40% Republican consistently. How many Congress people were from Massachusetts Republican? None. We don't draw a map that gives them a fair chance. To heck with them. They don't matter. The only minority that you are allowed to discriminate against in the state of Maryland is a political minority. You shouldn't discriminate against anybody. You shouldn't discriminate against them on the basis of their gender, their race, their religion, their political beliefs. You should take them where they stand and how they have chosen to live and where they have grouped themselves in compact and contiguous districts full of communities of interest, and you should let them vote. And if you win, you win. And if you lose, you lose. And the earth continues to spin on its axis, and the Constitution continues to exist, and the United States of America continues to be the greatest nation on the face of the earth and the shining light for democracy. We lose that when we start cheating. We lose that when we put party above all else. And that's what this bill is the predicate for. And if it's not, if it's just an academic exercise to waste 2 of our days, then man, oh man, I don't know what's going on here. We should have came here and talked about affordability. We should have came here and talked about trying to help people because Maryland's not going too well. That's not a partisan thing. I live here too. I wish Maryland was going great. I wish things were going, I would much prefer that Maryland was doing extremely well and it was bad for myself and my party politically because people would be like, look, Democratic leadership of the state of Maryland is doing a great job. The economy is up. The state is booming. Everything is going great. Our educational scores are jumping through the roof. Crime is history. I wouldn't be able to make a lot of partisan arguments, and that'd be okay. In fact, that'd be great because we'd have a better state. We should have done something different here these last couple days. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the lady from Harper County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
I've been around the Maryland General Assembly for 24 years, and I've been in politics for 39 years, and I've represented the town of Bel Air for 39 years. Bottom line is that Maryland has the reputation of being America in miniature. It is very diverse. You have the Eastern Shore, you have the Western Maryland, and you have everybody in between. And each county is very unique and very different. And if you go to different courthouses, the climate is different. And like if I go to Baltimore County, it's different than Cecil County, than Harford County. So what I want to say is this should not be a special session that we are dealing with redistricting. It should be about the problems that are facing our residents. Taxes, gas going up, groceries are going up. The developmental disabilities community is very frustrated and concerned, and rightly so. These are very vulnerable individuals, and we are leaving them behind. And these folks are very much better taken care of by their families than by people running in and out of the house, because the family loves that person very, very much, and they want to take care of them, and they've dedicated their time, their life, and probably their careers as well, because I've spoken to several families in my district, and they are very, very concerned. And the children that they are taking care of are very, very fragile and vulnerable. So, with that being said, Maryland is the 7th state. We were one of the 13 states. Maryland has a tremendous history. A history that what we're doing today is not worthy of the state of Maryland. This is degrading us, because Maryland is the 2nd oldest legislative body in the world next to Parliament. Now think about that. Parliament was in 1200 in Europe, in London, and here we are. We are one of the oldest legislative bodies. Washington resigned his commission. He could have been a dictator. No, he went back to Mount Vernon and wanted to have a private life. We had the 2 longest speaker and presidents of Maryland, Speaker Bush and President Miller. The bottom line is that I don't think if they were still running the show, they might have done this, but we don't know. Okay, and I'm not going to blame anybody, but the point is that the governor is really running for president, and anybody that thinks that he isn't running for president or vice president, they haven't seen all of the Sunday talk shows. The Eastern Shore is so different from Western Maryland, so different from the Cecil County or Harford County or even Baltimore County, and we have had a history of the broken pterodactyl, and everybody told Representative Sarbanes, don't worry, you're going to get 60% of the vote, be okay. So he bit the bullet and ran in the broken pterodactyl district. I would just say that we have some of the finest institutions in the world, medical institutions, Johns Hopkins, Greater Baltimore, shock trauma. It's incredible. People come from all over the world to get medical treatment here. We have some of the finest museums and art galleries and universities in the world. And I don't need to mention them all, but they're great facilities. We had the slave trade, okay, down at the docks, where people were auctioned off, African Americans, right off the boat. Now we have the largest black caucus in the United States. So that shows that things have changed and that we are moving forward. And I just think that Maryland is better and is hurt by what we're doing today. I think we need to have independent groups. We don't need, and this idea
Excuse me, 1 minute, please.
Pardon?
1 second, please.
Okay.
Will the body please listen respectfully? Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know, you know, I'm an old coot, and I'm on the way out. But I want to say that this has been very, very wonderful legislature as far as how kind and peaceful the folks have been, our staff members that work with us. So, you know, it's a wonderful staff that we have that basically are nonpartisan. The other thing I would say is that we have wonderful facilities, federal facilities. We have the Fort Meade. We have APG, Edgewood. We have the National Guard. We have good public safety. And I just think that this is not Maryland. This is beneath Maryland. And so with that, I would just say it's a great state. We need to stay a great state. And this is below that level of the state of Maryland. Thank you very much.
Madam
Thank
Speaker.
you.
Madam
The gentleman
Speaker.
from the Eastern Shore in the back.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for calling on me sooner because, you know, it is personal to me. Representing the Eastern Shore, you know, a lot's been said. A lot of it I agree with. You know, we heard from the delegate from Harford County saying how this is just bad policy, bad politics. Who's going to represent us in D.C.? I agree with that. We heard the minority leader talk about, you know, we just heard a speech where we're just doing this, but we're not going to use it. That's crazy. That's an insult of our intelligence, and that's when my frustration really started to go up. You know, and then I heard from the chair of the Eastern Shore delegation that, you know, he's not upset or frustrated or whatever. Well, I am. You know, this to me is frustrating. We talk about yesterday, after a speech we heard from the delegate here from Dorchester County, and we heard where the state gives Eastern Shore $1 billion. Well, what do you think the Eastern Shore gives the state of Maryland? I guarantee it's a lot more than that, and I'd like to know that number. And the people feel like they deserve a voice. They're tired of people from Central Maryland making their decisions for state policy, and now you're overreaching and making decisions for them at the federal level. And they are frustrated. They are disenfranchised. So, you know, we hear about Texas. You know the difference of Texas? They can afford to waste money to do something like this. We can't. How broke are we? How much is this going to cost? We're wasting taxpayers' money right now to be here. We're how much in the hole, and we're doing this? You know, I tried to look at the bright side of everything. The only bright side I can see of this bill isn't a single subject bill. It's a housing bill, too. It's going to do more for housing on the Eastern Shore to eliminate the housing shortage because this bill is going to push more people out of Maryland. You know, we kid ourselves. We say, oh, Marylanders aren't leaving. Well, fortunately, the comptroller, she confirmed it. We wonder why we're in the state we're in financially. We wonder why people are leaving. The Eastern Shore, Worcester County, the county I represent, gets the least amount of funding from this state. And they put out the best students in the state. And this is the treatment we get back? Well, I guarantee you, I don't know if Mayflower Moving Company is a private company or public. We might want to look into some stock in some of those. That's my stock tip for the day.
Recognizing the gentleman from Charles County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, colleagues. So I just want to stand today, and I've listened. Luckily, this morning I was coming in with a lot of anger, and had two young angels come and speak to me in the elevator, and really gave me a sense of peace. To my Republican colleagues, I'm not here today to defend my party. You know, I've watched the mistakes, you know, the fact that we, instead of a big tent, have become a lot of little tents that you got to fiddle under. Sometimes we fail to allow white men to have a voice in our party. And that's what they tell me. But I've also experienced it personally from the moment I got here. I've been publicly castigated in their pride since I've been here. I've been embarrassed, lost positions, for simply being an African-American man who's capable of speaking his mind and standing on his principles. So I'm not here today to defend my party, and that's not why this bill is important to me. Because there's a lot of frustration, but as I said, I've got a lot more peace now. Thank you. I'm here today because I know we don't want to talk about the elephant in the room, but it is an elephant in the room. We talked about the redistricting. We talked about the war that's never going to end, tariffs. We have a Congress that's not doing anything. A man that's charging $100,000 a month so you can have early access to his tweets so the rich can get richer. And I said this before, this is not an R versus D thing, this is the billionaires versus the rest of us. Some people just don't believe that, but I understand why y'all don't trust my party, because I've been here. And I've watched the redistricting, so I'm not here to say trust me. But I do know I've talked to several of my colleagues, both here and on the other side, including our Senate President, with the hopes that this is just an arrow in the quiver. Because the hope is that we don't have to do this. And I know my much older and more learned colleague, who's the minority leader, has said that we're going to keep on winning. I don't believe that's true. And I'm hoping that that will basically deal with some of these issues. Because there are a lot of people, a lot of your colleagues, who don't want to do this. And while we're upset because it seems that while actual minorities no longer count, that parties do, but we don't want anybody to feel that they don't have a voice. But you have to understand, a lot of the complaints we talk about are disabled. We talk about the budget. We talk about, these are things from the federal level. We don't have any allies in this world anymore. We're attacking Canada and Greenland. We're still Americans. I didn't fight for Maryland. I didn't even live here. I fought for this country. And I'm watching this inept Congress do nothing. And I know from talking to many of these colleagues on both sides, and I know you don't trust, and I'm not asking you to trust me, I just want you to hear me, is the hope is we don't have to do anything more. The hope is that the policies that are disastrous will weigh themselves out in this next election. But just in case, we have to put ourselves on that level playing field. We just want to be able to determine, much like all the other states are doing, how we draw our maps. Not be held to a different or higher standard. But I just wanted to make it very clear, because I've spent 16 years here and it has been tumultuous at best. It ended in utter misery and embarrassment. So I'm not here about partisanship. I'm here because I care about our country, and our Congress is doing nothing. Some of you may send your children off to war very soon. Our minority leader may be sending his grandkids very soon. And I say that because it is something that is important to me. Now, you're supposed to have congressional approval for these things, but we don't. Tariffs are a tax on us. That's a congressional matter, but it's not. There's nobody investigating the billions of dollars. Remember when I said last time, 1.5 billion? It's 4 billion now. And I gave everybody my list to say, hey, check me if I'm wrong. When I gave that long, some would say diatribe, I would just call it a short speech. But I really just wanted to stand up and say that I understand, because I've been apprised since I've been here, and I'll probably be one as I leave. But this isn't partisan, and I'm not asking you to trust me, because you have no right to. And like I said, I've seen redistricting, but I've talked to enough people whose hopes is this never has to be used, whose hopes that we don't have to do it this way, and we don't have to jump in the mud and join in the fray. However, we have to be ready, because we can't keep going to these wars. We can't keep paying these taxes. The ACA is going to get, I think, 30% next year. People are not going to be able to afford health care. We've got to be ready. And I will tell you, I'm not going to speak for anybody else in this chamber, but it is not my goal that we become 8-0. But it is my goal that we be ready as a state in case we need to pull this trigger, and that we be allowed to determine it ourselves as we've always done, as the Constitution that we have followed and Maryland Constitution has allowed us to do in drawing our congressional maps. Because I've heard some amazing speeches from people I didn't think could speak that well. And I'm very proud of my Republican colleagues, and I always have been. And I know the fight you fight. The fight you fight here is a fight I fight every day as a minority. But I get it. It's no less of a fight, and your voice still counts. And I'd like it to. So I just want you to know personally, the reason I'm supporting this is in the alternative. If Congress continues to be the way it is, and these wars continue to go on, and the money we spend and the people that suffer and are disabled that suffer, and my foster care kids that suffer because they can't get health care now, I want to be ready. And I can't say anything about anybody else, and I know the political machinations, which I've never been good at. But it is not my intent to take away your voice. And I know it was never your intent to take away ours, and other states may have done that. But not in this body. I don't believe that you would do that to us. So I just wanted to make sure, personally, I'll let you know, a lot of people I've spoke to, they don't want to do this either. If the election goes the way I believe it goes, we're not going to have to do this. This would just be an arrow in the quiver. And again, I'm not asking you to trust me because especially some of those who've been here a long, long time, I get it. We went from 6-2 to 7-1. The last map was 8-0. But as an elected official, I'll give you my word, that is not the intent. That is not my intent. Because I want everybody to feel that they have a voice, because believe me, I know what it's like in this body to feel like you don't have a voice.
Madam Speaker.
Minority Whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, the minority leader said earlier that we're not idiots. And I will tell you, our citizens are not idiots either. So you say that this exercise is not about maps, but you've already passed an 8-0 map. This body, the first order of business of the last legislative session was to pass an 8-0 map. You say that this is in response to Texas. My God, Texas living rent-free in y'all's head. But yet, you've been gerrymandering before Texas, decades before Texas. You say this is about giving the citizens of Maryland a voice to decide what to do, but yet you remove the 15-day comment period for the ballot question. And the most egregious thing of all is that when the minority party stands up to speak up for the citizens, you remove our voice. You go to take out the last representative we have. I got to tell you, that ain't a good look. Our citizens deserve better than that. They do. To the minority leader's point, if the state was doing great, the economy was doing great, public safety is great, we weren't the 49th out of 50th worst economy in the country, we wouldn't have a lot to say. You'd be killing it. We'd have to rethink what we were doing. But the fact your only remedy when we bring these things up, common issues, the number one issue in our state is affordability. Democrats, independents, Republicans, we're all saying the same thing. And when we bring it up, your only solution is to eliminate us? What's that say about you? What's that say about you? We've said it till we're blue in the face. What other states are doing is wrong. I thought we were better than them. I thought in Maryland we'd set an example for our citizens. We'd get down to the real business that's important to our citizens. And there's plenty of it. It's disappointing. And I got to, you know, I know the majority leader and others have a tough job to do to, I don't want to use the word spin, but to make this appear something other than this. But we're not idiots. Our citizens are not idiots. Everyone knows exactly what is going on here. They've seen the maps. They've seen the votes. They know exactly what is transpiring, and it's beyond disappointing. So I will keep rising. I will keep losing for the 6.5 million Marylanders that deserve better, because that's what I was hired to do. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. The young lady from Prince George's.
Speaker, I just want to direct some of the comments from the the minority leader. Many of you say that the federal government has no impact on Maryland, but our bond ratings say differently, and how we're doing in the state. But I don't know if a lot of you even know, but some of our colleagues, like myself and a few others on this floor, and across the chamber and in the US Senate, were personally named in a press release by the White House, and our lives were literally put in danger. Because we acted in the best interest of our communities. It has nothing to do, what we did had nothing to do with the activities in the federal government. Yet, they made it about a national platform. And I just want to reiterate that I too know, as I mentioned during the last session, what it's like to be on the other end. And so I can sympathize, but now, given the national conversation, we cannot stand aside. We must act. And for that, I thank you to support HB 2100. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from St. Mary's. You right here in front of me.
Oh, Calvert, Madam Speaker.
I'm sorry, Calvert. You want to sit and we call on St. Mary's? No, just kidding. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you.
I just got redistricted, yeah.
I wish, really. You know what, my friend, I'm not even going to touch that. I'm not even going to touch that.
Yep. So House Bill 2100 is about rigging elections. I think everyone knows this. It's no secret. It's August 4th. You know, here we are in the middle of the summer, and we're talking about House Bill 2100, which is obviously solely to rig elections. How did we get here? And it did take a long time to get to this point in the state. About 25 years ago, approximately, the Democrat Party in the state decided that it was important to them to begin gerrymandering state legislative districts. Stay with me on this. And as they did that, they noticed that the Republican Party was gaining seats, which it did. It did. Under former House Minority Leader Tony O'Donnell, the Republican Party reached a ton of seats in this House. And when they redistricted the Democrat Party, a process by which you control, you get to write the rules, you get to write the districts, you get to draw the districts, you get to make all the laws. So it's an unfair game, it's a rigged game. You decided to gerrymander out as many Republicans as you could over several redistricting periods in this House. And now today, you have a supermajority that you have created through gerrymandering members of the House of Delegates. What do you do with your supermajority? Perhaps you should go back and speak to the founders of this great country, like George Washington, who stands over there, who gave his farewell address, and ask him, what does a majority party that has a supermajority do with that power that they accumulated through gerrymandering and rigging, because they get to draw all the elections? They get to draw they get to decide when the elections are, they get to make all the rules, they get to draw the districts. So what do you do with that power? You put in House Bill 2100 in the middle of the summer when people are on vacation for the purpose of rigging elections. And if that weren't enough, And now you have the 3/5 majority to pass anything that you want because you have rigged the state legislative districts. That's how we got here. That is the very definition of tyranny that the founders gave to us. Because you have the power doesn't mean that you should be exercising it in a way that snuffs out opinions and diversity of thought. But boy, do you all fear that. There's no doubt in my mind. And then you put a bill in, House Bill 2100, and then change the bill substantially without public notice. So the public sees the bill online, including me, by the way, in the middle of the summer, and then you amend the bill, which Stanford Ward from DLS, yes, I'm getting that on record, who's a wonderful person, by the way, incredible professional. He has to do what he's told by the majority party. Acknowledged, yeah, you only just got this today, which was August 3rd. So the public didn't see it at all. Had they done so, they would have seen that on page 3 of the reprint, lines 7 through 9, that you changed something really substantive. Notwithstanding any other provision of the law, is what you wrote, at that general election, the following question shall be submitted to the qualified voters of the state. That's really important. Here's why. Because it's a legal override clause, it means that the requirement applies regardless of any other statute and law that might otherwise conflict with it. So if there was an existing statute concerning notice or timelines or process that conflicted with this constitutional amendment, it doesn't apply. This means that the Democrat majority has decided it has no rules. There are no rules. There is no Constitution. We are in a post-constitutional republic, which you and you alone have created in this state. Because you're in charge. What will you do with that power? This is what you have done. And you have decided to disenfranchise the kindest people that I have ever met, which are the people on the Eastern Shore. I've had the great opportunity of doing business there in my real job, which I'm currently doing. Nicest people ever. And you're telling them, nah, you don't get to have any representation. They have a wonderful quality of life, which they have created. They have created that great quality of life. Who wouldn't want that quality of life? And yet the majority party has decided that rules don't matter, that previous statutes don't matter, that they're going to just rush this through, and that the public doesn't even get to see the actual bill or testify for the actual bill that was online. And perhaps more people would have shown up. Then there's the whole limitation. Only 50 people can testify. What? For a constitutional amendment? And then a joint hearing. I mean, who does this? Who does this? Well, there is someone who did this in history, and his name is Mayor Curley from Boston. He decided that he was going to make it so, the city of Boston, so unlivable for his opponents. And his opponents were Protestants, white Protestants, and Mayor Curley was an Irish Catholic. He made sure that he passed laws that were so full of graft that only benefited his voters that everyone moved out and left. And the city suffered for decades as a result of it. Maryland is engaging in its own real-time Curley effect, where the Democrat majority is using its power to force out of state and force out of office anyone who disagrees with them. And so why are they doing this? Why, Madam Speaker, why Democrats are you using the power that you have accumulated over the years through gerrymandering to have House Bill 2100 in the middle of the summer for a special session rather than talk about all the other germane issues. And it's because you are terrified of your far left and you won't take them on. That the responsibility of a statesman and a stateswoman is to take on your far left. And who are they? These are the people that you're kowtowing to that are saying, cancel the police, cancel ICE, end private property, seize the means of production. These are your Marxists' left flank. I know that you know, and I know that they're there, and they're active, and they are winning, and they are consuming you as a party. A statesperson stands up and says, this will not go, this will not fly, we will not allow this. But you're not able to do that. Instead, we brought this bill to satisfy them because they don't believe in a two-party system. And by definition, by putting this bill in, House Bill 2100, either do you. Either do you. I have to tell you, I've witnessed the gerrymander of districts in this state. In fact, my good friend from Calvert County, he represents Calvert and Prince George's County, that district was drawn across, and it's not his fault because he wasn't here, to be fair. That district was drawn across a natural boundary where there isn't even a bridge. How'd that happen? Well, gerrymandering. Minority party isn't represented when that happens. In my own district, I remember in my first term, my wife and I bought a house in Prince Frederick, and we unfortunately got stuck in the Great Recession and couldn't sell our other house. The state was engaging in full-time, real-time redistricting, and the former Senate president, who was my senator, put one house in one district and one house in the other. Who does that? Who does that? But on the actual principle of using your power, you've accumulated power, and I'll finish with this. You've accumulated power by rigging the system. It's almost, and then you pass this bill because you know you have 3/5 majority to do so because of the rigging of the state legislature, and you can easily jam this through. And then you amend the bill last minute because you're not fully prepared. And you're basically saying, all those other laws that exist that govern the way elections are run and ballot measures and constitutional amendments, they don't matter. It's kind of like an Oriole in Camden Yards hitting a home run, and the umpire says, nah, it's not a home run this time. And the Oriole looks at him and goes, well, why? He goes, I changed the rules. Sorry. That's what you're doing. How shameful. How shameful. But there isn't shame because the left flank of the Democrat Party, the folks that want to cancel the police, cancel ICE, seize private property, seize the means of production, your Marxist left wing, they're also anti-Semitic. Oh yeah, very much so.
Madam Speaker.
Trust me, I know.
Recognizing the majority
that's
leader.
out of order, Madam Speaker.
Calling
that's
the Marxists anti-Semitic?
That's the last impugning of the members that I think we can accept, Madam Speaker. This is
If the gentleman from Calvert, 1 second, let me finish. You and I have talked about this in the past. You can make your argument, but please don't make it personal. Let me tell you something. You mentioned the name of a DLS employee. DLS are nonpartisan. They get requests, 1 second please.
I said that.
They get requests from Republicans, from Democrats, and they have to do it because they work for us.
Agreed.
Let me tell you something.
I agree. He's the best of DLS too, Madam Speaker. I agree with you, and I said that.
Name. And let me tell you, let me just take a second to say, do not mention anyone's name. especially DLS. Let me tell you, it is horrible to get a threat. I get threats all the time. I received a threat of someone they called and said that they wish that when I go home, that I find the brains and bones of my family on the walls. I can take it, okay? I'm a big girl, but they work for us. So I'm asking everyone, it's not personal. Do not mention any clerks, DLS, trooper, no one's, leave them alone, okay? Please. Thank you. That's all. Let's move on, please.
Oh, sure.
Okay,
And
let's
the
move
majority
on.
leader got up and said, I can't talk about how Marxists are anti-Semitic. Well, they are. I'm married to a Jew, Madam Speaker. This I know. This I know.
Please don't do that.
Okay.
Let's not go down. Do
and,
not do that. Please just wrap up like you said you were going to do, okay?
Of course.
Thank you.
And the left of the Democrat Party is consuming it. And I would like just to see someone in your party tweet out, put on X or put on Meta or put on Instagram, that you think private property is a foundational principle of the country and of Maryland. I would like you to put out on X or on Meta or on Instagram that you believe that we support police and support ICE and that America has borders. I would like to see you put that out there. I would like to see you put out there on X or in Meta or on Instagram that you believe in a two-party system and that you oppose getting rid of the United States Senate like your far left supports, and that you support the Republic and the Electoral College. I would like to see all those things. But guess what I won't see, Madam Speaker? I won't see any Democrat tweet that out. And if I do see one, I will commend them. I can assure you I will do so. And so, for all those reasons, I'm obviously not supporting HB 2100 because just because you have the power doesn't mean you should exercise it. And yet here we are. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Prince George's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And
Welcome.
colleagues, I had absolutely zero intention to rise to offer any comments today referencing House Bill 2100. And of course, we are a part-time legislature, which means it's very unprecedented for us to even be here at this time. Democracy calls for it, and although my colleague, my dear friend from Calvert, invoked my particular district, I felt it was appropriate to respond. So just a quick fact, because again, the map before us deals more with the congressional districts and of course the Eastern Shore, to my great colleagues in the Eastern Shore. But did you know that there is only about 4,000 more Republicans in Calvert than Democrats? In this binder, I have emails from constituents all throughout Calvert and Prince George's County who are in favor of what we're doing right now. I have a constituent that just texted me this morning and says, I am so thankful and so grateful that we're standing up and meeting the moment, actually too late, and I wish we'd accomplished this in April. And so let's put all of that into perspective. Yes, I understand that there are very intense feelings and people feel that they're being marginalized, their voices are being silenced. I beg to differ because they have the right to vote, they have the right to select exactly who they want to serve as their representative in Congress. And so Southern Maryland in the 5th Congressional District, we are very unique. We have rural, we have urban, we have suburban. District 27B may not be connected by a highway, but it's connected by the Patuxent River. And I think if you recall the decision by the state Supreme Court, Battaglia, I believe, or whoever made that ruling, forgive me for not having it, there was the issue of should it be connected by a roadway? But just know this, in the 27th District, in Calvert and Prince George's County, you'll see rural and you will see suburban. You'll see a myriad, but you will also see similarities. And I think the standards for a district is it must be compact, it must be contiguous, and there must be similarities. And so I think we should keep at the matter at hand, which is House Bill 2100, and combating the extremism in Washington, and not invoking the district that we serve together. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Welcome. Madam Speaker. Recognizing the lady from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Body, the question that we always ask, or we should ask, when a bill comes through is, what problem are we trying to solve? So House Bill 2100, the problem that the majority party is trying to solve is getting rid of all Republicans in the Maryland congressional delegation. So you all attempted that earlier this year, was not successful, and have come back because this pesky thing called the Constitution has stopped you. So House Bill 2100 has language in it that says, page 2, lines 23 to 25, notwithstanding nothing in this article or elsewhere in the Constitution, including the Declaration of Rights, provides applicable criteria for the boundaries of a congressional districting plan. So what does that mean? Throw out the Constitution and the Declaration of Rights to draw congressional districts. It's wrong. The language, the quote, simple language that is going on the ballot doesn't say that. It dances around it. It is not plain language. It doesn't say exactly what your bill said, which is nothing in the Constitution or Declaration of Rights can be used for congressional redistricting. It says something else. Public comment period, gone. You had a chance, people. You had a chance. We were told that. You got your 24 hours to sign up for your testimony. And then we had that errant judge, we've been lectured about, that awful in the bill, Shalega versus Lamone. And the judge, Lynn Battaglia. Let's talk about her, this errant judge. She was appointed to be the U.S. Attorney for Maryland by whom? Bill Clinton. She was appointed Associate Judge for the Maryland Court of Appeals by Larry Hogan. Oh no, that was Glenn Denning. In 1988, she was the Maryland Attorney, appointed Chief of the Criminal Investigations Division by the Maryland Attorney General. Who would that be? Joe Curran. And she was the Chief of Staff to Senator Barbara Mikulski. So, you know, this, quote, errant judge is clearly a Democrat and probably has never voted for a Republican, but she's an errant judge. Then we have the magic eraser. I'll call it the magic. You guys know the magic eraser? That thing's pretty cool, right? Probably have one in your house. So my little granddaughter was over and she found, you know, those stamps on the back of the check that say deposit only. So she was 3 then. And somehow she got a hold of my stamp deposit only, and I'm walking up the steps and I see these black marks on the wall. I'm like, what the heck's on my wall? I go up and read it, deposit only. So I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to repaint the walls now. Thanks, Ryan. And instead I got the magic eraser out. That thing was magic. It erased all those black marks. Well, the magic eraser in this bill, House Bill 2100, is the clause that you put in that, again, no one in the public got to see or comment on. On page 3, lines 7 to 9, you struck out the language and you put in, quote, notwithstanding any other provision of law. That's your magic eraser. What are you erasing? The black ink from Senate Bill 29 that was just passed unanimously in the House and Senate. And this bill took effect June 1st of this year, signed into law by the governor. And according to the testimony from Senator Cheryl Kagan, who is the sponsor of the bill. Senate Bill 29 sets a submission deadline of July 1 in an election year, followed by a 15-day public comment period for revisions or legal review before a ballot is finalized. And maintain the current requirement that the State Board of Election and local boards publish the full text of proposed constitutional amendments at least 65 days before the general election, with links to relevant legislative websites. Well, the magic eraser erased that, and here we are, violating that law with a violation of the single subject rule, and this notwithstanding. We know it's illegal. You know it's illegal. You could have come back in June and followed the law. You could have called a special session and met your July 1st deadline, but you did not. Just because you have the majority does not make it right. Listen, we've heard it. Trump derangement syndrome, it's real. Donald Trump is authoritarian. No kings, no queens. I would look around this and say, what is going on here in a special session? It is authoritarian, and it is kings and queens. And with that, I will be voting against House Bill 2100.
Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Recognizing the gentleman from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the discussion this morning. I want to reframe and kind of get back to the subject of the bill. But first, I want to talk about the work that we do in the General Assembly, because there is, boy, a lot of comments about the Trump administration and Texas and all these people that live in our heads all day, and it's all we ever think about. This past session, we put into chapter 882 bills. You know how many of those dealt with the Trump administration directly? Handful. You know how many of those were partisan line votes? A handful. Because a vast majority of the work that we show up to do every single day as a General Assembly has nothing to do with the Trump administration, has nothing to do with what's happening in Washington. It has to do with the fact that we sit in our districts back home and listen to our constituents. We hear about what they are struggling with. And then we come down here and try to make the lives of Marylanders better. That's what we do. However, where I completely disconnect from the minority party's argument here is you want to act like we're in a vacuum, where the Trump administration doesn't exist, where Washington doesn't happen, where they're not simply waking up day in and day out seeking new, incredibly dehumanizing, incredible ways of harming our citizens in Maryland. And I'm sorry if you're not getting the emails from your constituents talking about the harm that's done, but I do, day in and day out. I have to hear from my constituents, and because of the work that I do in the nonprofit sector, I have to hear from a lot of your constituents too. I have to hear about how they're suffering because this administration is raising inflation over and over and over again. That gas prices are so high. You all worried about a gas tax? Talk to your federal administration about what they should be doing to resolve our gas problems and costs. You're worried about energy? Let's get on it. Federal administration keeps blocking every clean energy project in the country. You want to talk about things that are happening in Annapolis day in and day out as if Washington doesn't exist. That just isn't the case. We have to address the reality. And so as our majority leader pointed out, when the Trump administration went to Texas and said, find me more votes in Congress so that we can completely subvert the political process, overthrow the United States Congress, put in the people in power that we want, and guarantee that our agenda will be pushed through despite a majority of Americans being opposed to it, that we're simply supposed to act like that didn't happen. Oh, Texas can do whatever it wants. Florida can do whatever it wants. Tennessee can do whatever it wants. We're Maryland. We don't respond to these moments. We ignore them and act like they're not happening. And so at Madam Speaker's leadership, we took a moment and we said, you know what? There was this outlier ruling. And to my colleague from Baltimore County, it was just that, an outlier ruling. We have 150 years of data and information that has repeatedly shown us time and time again that when it came to our Maryland Constitution, we were talking about legislative districts in the Maryland Constitution, just like every other state in this country. As we talk about these issues, we're talking about our Constitution, the one that our citizens voted on, the ones that our citizens approved. And so we said there's a disconnect between this one outlier ruling and literally the remainder of all the history of jurisprudence and the public record, the legislative record, and the voting record of the state of Maryland. And so we're here today to resolve that challenge, to resolve that question. And the reason that's so important is because as much as my friends on the minority party want to frame this as we are trying to subvert some political system here, this isn't up to us. Guess where this issue goes to? Right back to the voters. Maryland voters, at the end of the day, are going to make this decision, not us. We're raising the question and the flag of concern because we don't get to act like we live in a vacuum where the Trump administration is not bearing down, trying to dismantle our democratic processes left and right. We don't get to act that way. But at the end of the day, we don't get to act like a totalitarian regime. We go back to our voters and we say, we think this is part of the solution. We think we need to make sure this is crystal clear for our communities. We need you to provide us feedback and tell us if we're spot on. And if we are, we need you to vote for this constitutional amendment. And so I end there, Madam Speaker, saying that this effort today, the effort that we're putting forward today, it's measured. It's not talking about maps. It's not talking about what we'll do in the future. It's talking about right now. We have to make sure our house is in order. And more importantly, we have to go back to our residents, go back to our constituents, and be able to say to them, with an honest face, you all get to decide what kind of Maryland you want to live in. This is going on the ballot, my friends, and I look forward to voting for it today, and I look forward to voting for it in the general election. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. The gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Colleagues, for those who may not know, I have the honor of representing Northern Baltimore County for the remainder of this term. I don't have an election this November. My only obligation is to the people, and I speak from the heart. At 28 years old, I rise in opposition to this bill, not only on behalf of my district, but on behalf of my generation. Marylanders, and in particular young ones, are struggling. Every year, the prospect of homeownership moves farther away, while the specter of us being squeezed out of the job market through artificial intelligence and globalization creeps ever closer. The cost of rent, childcare, utilities, and groceries, they continue to skyrocket. And amid all this upheaval is a key bridge that still hasn't been rebuilt, an incoming structural deficit, and an economy that was just ranked second worst in the nation. These are the issues our constituents send us to Annapolis to resolve. And what do? We call a special session where the only matter we can discuss is the best way to preempt a lawsuit so that we can disenfranchise over 1 million people in the name of democracy. This isn't just ironic, it's downright performative. This is partisan politics masquerading as a mandate from the people, while everyone's daily struggles are completely ignored. Colleagues, we are Maryland. We are the state of middle temperament. It doesn't matter where you land on the political spectrum. It is a disservice to those who have sat in these chairs before us and those who will sit in these chairs after us to stoop to the level of pettiness and theatrics that plague Washington, D.C. History may relegate this special session to nothing more than a footnote in the books. But the people will remember if we used our time down here and their money to improve their lives. We have just squandered away an opportunity to address the affordability crisis, critical infrastructure, and preparing opportunities for future Marylanders. The people of Maryland, our bosses, deserve better than this. Madam Speaker, colleagues, I still would be remiss if I didn't express my gratitude to how wonderful everybody has been and how sweet and welcoming you have been to me. And once we adjourn, I plan to stand by the door to greet as many of you as possible and shake your hands. However, if you feel that you would be unable to look me in the eyes and tell me that this amendment matters more than the economic challenges my generation is going to inherit, then I respectfully urge you to vote against this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome, and thank you for your, your nice comments. And I'm going to be the first one to go shake your hand. I am going to call next on the co-chair of the Rural Caucus.
Thank you,
Go
Madam
ahead.
Speaker, and I will make sure that I'm very respectful in my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
No, I did come out swinging yesterday, and I don't regret doing that. And the reason why I wanted to do that, because I did want to set the tone, and I wanted folks to know that this is a power move. And we have a special session.
I was going to say
This is-
something about the swinging, make a little joke. I'm from Dominican Republic, so I caught the ball. You know, we have the best baseball players.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's very true. That's very true. That's very true. No, this was a power move, and this is a very deliberate move to say that it's not as disingenuous. And there's a purpose for all of us being here, and I think that it was very well articulated by many of you all in the majority party. Articulated in such a way that you created a problem that's out there, and it's the elephant in the room that we're talking about. We don't like the policies that are coming out of Washington, D.C., so we're going to do something about it. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to add one more member to the U.S. House of Representatives with whom we agree with. So how are we going to do that? Well, there's only one way to do it. It has to be done in District 1 in Maryland. And the vast majority of District 1 is on the Eastern Shore. So I want to bring it back home. And this is the reason why I'm standing up right now. I don't think anyone in this room wants to deliberately harm anyone from the Eastern Shore. I know you guys, you would never do that. In fact, from time and time again, many of the policies that come out of the General Assembly help the Eastern Shore, along with other parts of the state of Maryland. They do, and we're very appreciative of that. But there are times when the policies that come out of this General Assembly do disproportionate harm to the Eastern Shore. And this is the reason why I'm standing up. I don't think you guys are trying to hurt us. However, if this bill does move, and you're all going to create maps to say that you're not, I don't think any rational person is going to believe that we're going to have a special session and there aren't going to be any maps that are eventually aren't going to be drawn out of this in order to be able to accomplish what your goals are. But you all are willing to sacrifice the Eastern Shore as collateral damage. You're willing to do that. And to say that you're not, I'm going to call you out as being disingenuous. That's not true. You all are willing to sacrifice the Eastern Shore as collateral damage. No Marylander ever should be collateral damage, ever. And that's what we're seeing right here, and this is what we potentially will see when you guys draw the maps. And you're doing this because of national political interests. And I want to bring it home. I wouldn't do this to you all under any circumstance. I would never come before the General Assembly and try to pass a bill that's going to harm you all, your family, your community, or your constituents. I just wouldn't do it. And I'm asking you all today to not move this bill. Don't do it. I understand what you all are saying, and we're talking about elections. Win the elections at the ballot. Make a persuasive argument to the voters to win elections. Don't rig the system in order to win. It's wrong. It's wrong. I understand that the ends justify the means, but do the right thing and vote against this. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I'm going to go to the other gentleman from the Eastern Shore. I'm coming to you back there in a second.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Finish here first. Go ahead.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You know, I started yesterday. It was kind of funny because when we got into this discussion, the whole start was kind of funny to me, and it's kind of sad because for the first hour, hour and a half, we had to discuss whether this bill was even legal. We confronted the majority party with questions about it, the viability, constitutionality, and we went back and forth. People with cell phones, people running up and down the aisles talking about things and saying, Jesus, can we really do this? So that started the tone off pretty poorly for me. Then we set the stage because we suspended the rules, and that was convenient. We went to the single subject matter. That was convenient. But then when we started pushing some of our amendments, we all of a sudden had rules again. So which rules do we follow, and why are we following them, and who's really in charge of this? I think the majority leader came out and said something about when he was young, his mom said something about being bullied. Well, you don't know bullying until you're a Republican in this chamber. You sit down and you have to walk through, and I've heard this from one of our people in my committee where he said that, you know what, I don't know why we listen to those Republicans. They don't matter. We have the numbers. That's a true statement, but boy, it's kind of bullying to hear it, isn't it? Kind of troubled me a little bit. I stood up here and I listened to things that this president has caused, but we failed to mention anything about the previous president. And maybe some of these things he's done are reactionary to the problems that were confronted by all of us by the last president and seeing the damage he's done. When you look at his policies, we talked about energy and how we don't have it. Well, I think Biden's the guy to close the pipelines. And clean and renewable energy, it's a great goal. We all love it, but look around you. We can't do it. We don't have the ability to do it just yet. And who's paying that price? Our citizens. So we sit here and we want to tell everybody that this isn't about maps, and it probably isn't about maps at this moment, but it is about maps. And we've disputed that, but we keep hearing the mantra, this is not about maps. It is. I sit on the Eastern Shore. I listened yesterday to how we can't take this personally. Well, I'll tell you what, I take it personally. I'm one of these immigrants to Maryland. I came from Pennsylvania. And I love this state. I live and breathe the Eastern Shore. I have my business there. My family's there. I've raised 2 children there. And I sit down and say, this is extremely personal. When I look around, I look at each and every one of you, as the good delegate in my district said, I'm not here to hurt you. You're here to hurt me, and you're demonstrating it today. You sit down and you want to use an excuse of, this isn't about you. This is about Donald Trump. He is the villain here. Biden, he was innocent. He didn't do a dang thing wrong. He was perfect. But as we move forward with this, I want everybody to start coming back, and I want to know what you don't know about your state, and I want to know what your Maryland looks like. And let me tell you what your Maryland looks like right now. You have a budget that's in severe crisis with 0 addressing it this year in our budget. We're hopeful that something will happen, that some sky will come in and we'll be able to get through this. A $3 billion plus deficit in the 4th year of our governor's reign. That is growing. That's not shrinking. There's been nothing done to manage that going forward. Nothing. We have energy policies and costs that are just destroying homeowners and people, your citizens. How many calls do you each and every one of you get when somebody, my electric's being shut off? I can't afford it. Can you help me? I'm not getting calls about, hey, can you get rid of Andy Harris? He's a jerk or something. I'm not getting those calls. I'm getting calls about that. I'm getting calls about the fact that we have nothing moving forward for this. We can look at our schools, and you know what we do with our schools? We praise ourselves, because what we've done for our schools to look good is we've changed the criteria to make us look better. We said instead of taking the test and passing it, you just have to sit for it. It'll be okay. Don't worry about it. These kids are growing. We look at transportation. We look at our highways. We listen to people complaining about that. We look at the problems we're having with it. We can take it down to our graduation rate. We can look at the delaying of the implementation of our education packages, and yet still professing that Kerwin is a rousing success. We can also take a hard look at some of the things we've really done well. We don't have a bridge, but we've done that real well. And I think I'll end on this one. I think the greatest thing was yesterday while we were in session, we found out that the Preakness no longer will be part of the Triple Crown. We spent $85 million, and what do we have? I encourage you to start thinking about what you're doing. This is not about President Trump. This is about working for Marylanders. All the things I just mentioned, we're negating. We don't care about them. And they're the calls I'm getting, contrary to the fact that everybody's worried about what Donald Trump will do, and everybody's not worried about what has been done, and they're not worried about the fact that we're going to have another president in a couple more years. So wake up and start looking at what you're doing to the people that actually care about this state. Thank you.
Recognizing the gentleman.
Thank you, Madam
from
Speaker.
Southern Maryland, who has been
Thank you,
very
Madam
patient.
Speaker.
Go ahead.
There were some beautiful speeches this morning, really passionate. I'm hearing about topics from Texas to the war on Iran to Donald Trump. I tell you, Trump derangement syndrome might be the only syndrome that's not covered by Obamacare. Because you look at some of the rhetoric in the chamber, and I would believe it, but the problem is I live in reality, and I've been in this chamber. I find it fascinating that in 2022, Donald Trump wasn't president. It was Joe Biden. And we had millions of people crossing the border illegally. We had inflation at a 40-year high. And we had a president that closed down refineries, canceled oil leases. His first day in office, he got rid of the Keystone Pipeline that sent gas prices skyrocketing. Yet, it was this General Assembly that didn't want to address anything in Washington. They turned in a map that would result likely in an 8-0 outcome. So all these speeches I'm hearing, I think really lack sincerity because you tried it 4 years ago. Why are we here today? Well, we are here today because of the Calais decision. You made tons of examples of that coming into this session. You turn a bill in. Well, first we come here on a tightly narrowed special session, restricted only to redistricting. And then the first bill we pass has to deal with collective bargaining of state employees, which has nothing to do with redistricting. And then during that bill process, the young lady from Frederick puts an amendment up, and we're told that that violates the single subject matter. And then this redistricting bill comes up, HB 2100. And then the floor leader says, well, there was a technical amendments. Well, what is it? Well, notwithstanding any other provision of the law. Whoa, whoa, whoa. That's a pretty big deal because it negates the current law that we're under now. Goodbye due process, so long public comment period for the public. The current law as of today, right now, constitutional amendments are supposed to be put in by July 1st. It's well over a month. Not a single person from the majority party has stood up and says, how does a constitutional amendment that will go into effect mid-November cure the current requirement of a law today? Because it doesn't. It doesn't. You all have screwed up. It doesn't work. The bill that we're pushing for now violates current Maryland law. And then, even with that, we offer up a slew of amendments that just basically get denied. Now, I realize some of those amendments did violate the single subject rule, but the amendments I'm talking about specifically how to deal with Calais and drawing non-racial districts, which Maryland clearly has. I think it's easy. The floor leader last night says, hey, we can't put this in law because we'll follow federal law. Really? You can't codify it? Well, I remember we codified Brown versus the Board of Ed, right? Matter of fact, we had codified a lot of the ACA, Obamacare. The biggest hypocritical thing I can remember is the last bill that we passed 4 months ago here in the General Assembly codified the Voting Rights Act. So we were able to codify it in the state there, but no, we can't codify the current ruling because you know why? Because that's not their intention. It lacks sincerity. It's not the intention. Madam Speaker, this whole process here is troubling. This is what we call tyranny by the majority, where we have what is good moral standards in our Constitution, compact, contiguous, respects the natural boundaries. We just had a gentleman from Calvert County said, you know, that's a good thing. Well, if it's a good thing in your state map, why would you have a different thing in your congressional map? Makes no sense to me. I can imagine 100 years ago when that was added to the Maryland Constitution, the people said, you know what, that's probably a good thing that we're going to keep people of like-mindedness together, communities of similar interests. But nope, not this body. You don't believe it. You're violating your rules. You're violating the current law. And gosh, I hope this gets thrown out in court. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
So, colleagues, I really just rise more so to talk a lot about the process. We heard from our colleagues across the aisle how this was a rigged process and how this was done in secrecy. And I'm not really standing to convince my colleagues across the aisle that we are right, they're wrong, or you're right, we're wrong. I'm really standing to make sure that the public understands exactly what took place. That 2 weeks ago, we received notice that there would be a special session. We didn't establish a special session and rush into a special session. There was time for us to discuss what would be discussed during the special session. And quite frankly, a lot of what we are discussing the special session are discussions that we've had over the standard 90-day session. We're discussing the merits of a decision by Judge Battaglia that was discussed several times throughout the session. Folks have referred to the maps. The maps did not pass. It was discussed again when we had the amendment on a bill regarding this constitutional amendment that we have before us again during this special session, thank you to Madam Speaker and the team for outlining what would be taken up so that when we got here, there'd be no gotcha moment that I think folks are trying to refer to. We knew specifically that before us were matters regarding the upcoming general election, that HB 2101, that there was a technical issue with there being two of those questions on the ballot, and that we did not want to create any sense of confusion for Marylanders with regard to that. So it was essential that we clarified that, and we did that, and we just passed that this morning. With regard to this constitutional question, clarifying how our congressional districts are to be drawn. We provided notice, the bill was released, we let folks, the public, comment on that process. And I want to let folks know that although there was a 50 oral witness cut, that everyone who submitted testimony was allowed to come and submit testimony. We received 51 witnesses for oral testimony. We received 93 written testimonies from the public officially. And also, I can't speak for other folks in this room, but I venture to guess that you also received a lot of emails, a lot of written correspondence as well from your constituents. The media has been covering this conversation, so if someone is not following the social media of their elected official, if they're not overly engaged in social media, the print media, via their online media print, there's been a lot of communication about this special session and what will be taken up. So I think it's unfair to say that there has not been transparency and that there has not been visibility about what this special session would consider. And the elephant in the room is the amendment. And I will call it that, and I will speak plainly to that. But I will say this, is that we provided a public process to weigh in on that language. We have done referendums in the past where we are allowed to develop that language as a legislature. And we did allow for there to be a process for people to weigh in on that, on what the ballot language would look like, and that's just what they did yesterday, and that's what they've done via email to our offices and via written and oral testimony. So I want to make clear, and the other thing about that process too, and again, however my colleagues feel about it across the aisle, at the end of the day, we will leave here. The ultimate decision about this constitutional amendment still lies in the voters. So if they feel as if we made the wrong decision with regard to the 15-day comment period, they have the right to utilize that in their decision about their answer to this ballot initiative come November 3rd. So I will be supporting HB 2100 today, and I hope that my colleagues will also support it. Thank you very much.
Recognizing the gentleman from Cecil. Oh, he was there? All right. So let's go to the gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, we've heard a lot about motivations and all those sorts of things. I don't want to talk about that. We've heard about Washington and other states. That's not what I'm concerned about. What I'm concerned about, and I respect that the chair just spoke about process, because that's also what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the process that we engaged in here to get to this point. So it started off with an executive order from the governor that was very limited in scope, but that on its face, I believe, presents clearly unconstitutional guidelines as to where we were going to go with it. The executive order itself flies in the face of recent Supreme Court decision, the Clay decision, of what it was asking us to do here, to draw race-based districts. So we start off with an illegitimate executive order. We then move to how the business was conducted here yesterday. You know, we have a set of rules. When we opened this session up, we voted on those rules. Those rules are also, when it's not spoken in those rules, it's governed by Mason's Manual. Mason's Manual is very clear that an executive order limits what you can do in a special session. We blew through that. We blew through that in this process to go down other pathways that were not mentioned in that executive order with respect to collective bargaining rights. So that's number two, where we went through a process that, in my view, is not legitimate. And then we get to the big problem of HB 2100. That tramples upon my constituents and all of our constituents' due process rights. What did we do with that? With that piece of language that the good lady from Baltimore County has talked about, that the gentleman from Southern Maryland has talked about, and others, we trampled upon statutory statutory law that says we have certain deadlines that we have to meet. We blew through one deadline of July 1st. We blew through another deadline of yesterday. We blew through my constituents' rights, a 15-day period to public comment. We ignored all of that. We violated all of my constituents' due process rights and all of ours here. We've effectively denied comments to some, like our overseas military personnel. The gentleman from Anne Arundel County spoke about that yesterday. You know, I'm deeply concerned that my constituents, our overseas military personnel, will even have the ability to cast a ballot in this process. We've had a huge ballot issue happen in the primary. And what did we do? We're still using that same vendor, by the way, that mailed out probably 500,000 erroneous ballots. And now we've complicated that process even more by this. By blowing through clearly defined statutory deadlines in this process, we violated all of our constituents' due process rights. And for what? For what? Well, we've been told now that maybe we're not even going to do anything with this. Well, then why are we here? I don't understand why we would do all of that for something that maybe we're not even going to use, we've now been told. I think that this was a tremendous amount of resources, of time, of money, and all those things spent that, frankly, we don't have. We've heard those conversations about where we are in a fiscal situation, where our economy is in this state, and yet here we are. Here we are in a process that is ripe with legal concern, and I hope some really smart lawyers are watching this right now, and they pick apart all of these issues of what we've gone through here, because it's not right to do this to our constituents. You know, we're the first district as well. It's not right to do this to my constituents. It's not right to do this to the constituents of the Eastern Shore as well. And so I hope some really smart attorneys are watching these proceedings and picking up on all of these illegitimate process problems that happened here this week. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Cecil, then the lady from
Thank you.
Frederick, who has been very patient. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
thank you, Madam Speaker. And thank you for this collegiate debate on this important issue. I'm really honored to get up and talk to this as a representative of the Eastern Shore, you know, heralding here from Cecil County. This is intrinsically important to us because we're the ones that are probably going to be most impacted if there is a change with the maps. And couple points that I want to make here. One is that we heard some testimony yesterday about turnout for elections and that it's really doesn't change all that much. But the reality is there is a huge drop-off in participation in our primaries. And our primaries are what matter, right? That's where most of our decisions are made. It's where most of our elected officials get picked. And unfortunately, coming from Cecil County, we were the lowest turnout in the state for this cycle, 11%. And the reason I bring that up is because that's apathy. That's people checking out. That's people not participating where it matters in the primary. And if we look, we could just say, well, that's just the way that it is, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's because of redistricting or what we're doing here. But then we take another important metric and we look at how are people identifying with political parties. And in Maryland, more so than any other state in the country, independents, unaffiliated, non-registered voters are the fastest growing population. That's another symbol, another sign that folks are not willing to participate in this process. This is the reason. We have a chance right now to do the right thing. Just because we can go ultra-partisan doesn't mean that we should go ultra-partisan. We've heard about what's happening in other states and how it's wrong, and we've got to be right there with them. That's how we're going to equalize what's wrong, is we're going to do wrong better. We have an opportunity here to go nonpartisan, to do independent commissions, to make districts as purple as possible, to have compactness, to have all of those good things that are out there. We have that power, but we're not exercising that. We're going in the wrong direction. We have the ability on a bipartisan basis to push forward maps, to push forward questions that everyone in here would agree on, that there would be broad consensus among our voters. And gosh darn it, I'm willing to believe that more people would vote, more people would participate if they knew that they had a chance to make a difference. And then it's not just all decided down in Annapolis. And the politicians are just doing what they do, and I'm going to live my life, and I don't want to have anything to do with it. 11% turnout in Cecil County. It's sad, and I hate to go out on a note like this. I don't like this bill. I think we have an opportunity here to be the exemplary breakaway from what's happening in the country. When this goes into effect, Donald Trump won't even be on the ballot. It'll be another 2 years from now. This is our chance to do the right thing. Vote no on this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Did you have a little person with you today?
I did. He's back and forth. And Wesley, if you want to wave to the body.
Where's Wesley?
He's right there, yep.
Hey, Wesley.
Yep. That's my little soccer star. And he's wearing red today. It's not by chance.
Welcome, Wesley.
Say hi.
What grade are you in?
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Oh, you're welcome. It's such a blessing to meet you. Beautiful.
Madam Speaker.
I am going to recognize the lady from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I know, now I have to follow that. Thanks. She knows what she's doing. She knows what she's doing. Because a flag of concern, we heard that said. Our state is actually flying a flag of distress. I want you to picture this. Next week, colleagues, when you are out knocking on your constituents' doors, or you're at a debate, and they ask you a simple question of what you accomplished in calling a special session, what will you say? Will you defend this special session by pointing south and claiming, well, Texas did it first, and but Trump? Is that going to be the answer they want to hear? And if we are so eager to follow Texas's lead, why does that ambition seem to stop at drawing political maps? Why aren't we calling emergency sessions to emulate the Texas economic playbook that is driving job growth, keeping energy manageable, and attracting families instead of driving them away? So let's talk about Texas. We've heard it said, I don't even know how many times. Individual state tax competitiveness. Texas, #1. Maryland, number 47. Texas's defining priority isn't map manipulation. It's becoming an economic powerhouse status. They just set up the Texas Stock Exchange. We lost the Preakness. If this General Assembly wants to take a page out of Texas's book, please give priority to giving structural economic growth a try. From those wonderful people at CNBC, their business climate rank, Maryland dropped 10 spots in 2 years. That's our issue. We are now 32nd. Texas is #2. We are losing our job creators. Cost of doing business, top tier for Texas, 46 for Maryland. State business climate, no personal income tax and a high competitiveness in Texas, 46 in Maryland. And the big one, because Marylanders are voting with their feet. They are taking their tax base, they are taking their families, and they are leaving. #1 in net inflow migration, Texas. Negative net out migration, almost 20,000 people lost recently. Marylanders are reaching a breaking point. Power bills surging, driven in part by rapid data center expansion, straining our energy grid. Did we address that #1 issue on your side, my side, independence? High taxes and the cost of living pressures are forcing young families, and my colleague did an amazing job, sir, an amazing job of recognizing that. And longtime business owners, just last week, are wondering if they even have a future in this state. We were called into an emergency special session, but what was the emergency? Is it offering immediate rate relief to families who can't afford their bills? People cannot afford their bills right now. No. Is it lowering our tax burden or stemming those tide of job creators leaving for neighboring states or South Carolina, Florida, Tennessee, Texas? No. Did we start the process of reforming the blueprint for education? the driving force of our looming structural deficit? I would have been happy to have that conversation. No. Did we protect our state and our communities from unchecked hyperscale data center development and the cumulative impact of potentially thousands of massive diesel generators? No. Instead, legislative leadership explicitly restricted this session to two things. Explicitly, I tried to put bills in. Lord knows y'all, I try to put bills in all the time. These were what were absolutely crucial for my constituents. We set up the bills to be the future potential of redrawing map boundaries to protect political fiefdoms and correcting a duplication error. The true emergency is that everyday Marylanders can no longer afford to live here. And this is not just about bad political priorities. It goes to the core of our constitutional foundation. Under Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution, the federal government guarantees to every state a Republican form of government. In constitutional theory, a republic means representative self-rule government governed by the people, the exact opposite of an entrenched, self-perpetuating regime. And please don't take my word for it, because goodness knows you don't like listening to me. U.S. Representative Jamie Raskin noted that when politicians use hyper-partisan gerrymandering to lock themselves into permanent power, regardless of the popular vote, they nullify the guarantee clause. A state where voters cannot change their representative outcome ceases to operate as a constitutional republic and becomes a party state. Justice Elena Kagan warned that maps designed to deprive citizens of equal participation signify that the political process has broken down. And Stacey Abrams observed that when you render an entire opposition party powerless by drawing them out of existence, you aren't defeating your political opponents in a republic. You are eliminating republic-style government itself. So if we truly believe in government of the people, by the people, and for the people, then our emergency focus today and yesterday should have been on the people, not on political geography. And I urge my colleagues to reject these misplaced priorities, fulfill our constitutional mandate under the Guarantee Clause, and respect Article 7 of the Maryland Constitution, that the right of the people to participate in legislature is the best security of liberty and the foundation of all free government. And so when the governor and the state leadership, highest priority in assembling a special session, when people and families are struggling to put food on their tables, they're struggling at the grocery store, the doctor's offices, and in their schools. This has become an enterprise of self-preservation and not serving the people of Maryland. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. Recognizing the gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam
and
Speaker.
then the lady from Prince George's, and then I'm coming to the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So we heard a little bit earlier about the testimony that was given for this bill yesterday. And just for the folks at home, there you guys are. And so we're tracking. The total favorables on this bill, which includes the sponsor, was 10. The total favorables with amendments was 11. That's 21. Total unfavorables, unfavorable, 128. Information only, 4. Total oral, 51. Total witnesses, 93. So not only in polling, but in testimony, the constituency has spoken that they do not want this. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. The lady from Prince George's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to clarify a point of order that's come up a couple of times about HB 2101. While the governor can restrict things, we are totally within our right to look at any bills that we need to while we are in session, because we are a separate but equal branch of government. And in Masons, that same section we looked at the other day, section 780, subsection 11, it says that these laws can be done so long as there's any reasonable connection. And it is reasonable to, when we're looking at amendments to our Constitution, to fix problems that we know about. HB 2101 is a known problem. If we don't fix it, we run the risk of having conflicting constitutional mandates. So we have to fix it and correct it before we vote. So I wanted to clarify that in case there are any legal challenges later on. We are within our rights. It's in compliance with Masons. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy Parliamentarian. We're going to go now to the Eastern Shore, and we're going to recognize the gentleman on Health and Government Operations. Health.
The Health Committee.
Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, colleagues, late last night, I think it was around 10:30, I introduced an amendment for the Eastern Shore to secede from the state of Maryland. My 24-year-old daughter, who lives in Scotland, has already told me and corrected that I said the word wrong, secede, last night, so I wanted to make sure I'm saying it right today. But there was some levity, obviously, in that. But I appreciate the floor leader's comments back to me in understanding and your empathy that we are being disenfranchised on the Eastern Shore. It wasn't just 28 years ago. It wasn't just 175 years ago when Thomas Holliday Hicks was the delegate. It's been going on for over 250 years that the Eastern Shore has felt disenfranchised. And the passage of this bill will just exacerbate that. I've heard some comments about my current Congressman, Andy Harris, living in Baltimore County. For as long as I've always known him, he's also always owned property in Cambridge. And I've always seen him as my local congressman. Since 2008, he's owned a home in Cambridge. And the reason why he made it his permanent home, he got redistricted out of Congressional District 2 and said, you know what, I'm going to go down and live in Cambridge and represent the Eastern Shore. He's one of the highest ranking members of the current administration. He is subcommittee chair in appropriations for agriculture. And I'll tell you what, he supports our farmers, our watermen, our volunteer fire companies are all getting new equipment because of what he's able to do and to be able to provide for us on the Eastern Shore. So we are being disenfranchised. It's a sad day for us on the Eastern Shore when this bill gets passed. I vote no on this bill, and I ask for all of my colleagues to vote against this bill. Thank you.
Welcome. The gentleman from the Eastern Shore, then the lady from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
You know, I question why we're here. And as I say that, everyone says it's not about the map. It's basically about changing the Constitution. And to me, the Democratic Party's controlled this body since 1920, and it's controlled the Senate since 1900. And you have to ask yourself, the situation that we're in now, I keep listening and I keep hearing, and we keep blaming the President of the United States. But the fact of the matter is that we have a lot of control in this body and across the hall. A gentleman from Mako mentioned at a council meeting last month that our deficit is going to be, from an analysis, it's going to be $4 billion at the end of this year. You have to look at that and say, well, that's a real problem. You look at and talk to constituents, and basically their real problem is paying their electric bill. As I look at these different things, I ask, where are our priorities in this legislative body? You know, greed is a terrible thing. I love Wicomico County, the 50,000 people that I represent. That's what I'm standing up here for. That's why I come here, to represent them in the best way possible. This special session is to change the Constitution, and to change it for what? 7 out of 8 seats are already on your side. Greed, again, is a terrible thing. This Constitution was written in 1776, and I often wonder, to change something like that is extremely, extremely powerful, and I think that it should be taken way more seriously than what I would consider a knee-jerk reaction to something that we don't like, as in the president and a lot of the things that he's doing. To me, there is only one question, and that is to map or not to map. That is the question. That's where this is all going. Thank you very much, Madam
You're
Speaker.
welcome. The lady from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for your patience, because you've been very patient and very much willing to listen to everybody's viewpoint. So that takes a lot. I've been in your seat for a minute.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But I just want to share with you that I've certainly been grappling with this decision for some time, so much to the point that I convened a little General Assembly meeting on my front porch. And the 30 mosquito bites that I have now told the story. But my point is this: I wanted to seek clarity, not only for the citizens that were, there, but also for myself, to just really think about what we have before us, which I know it specifically is talking about a constitutional change and looking at this going to the voters. And so I thought about it. I was like, wow, I never want my citizens to think that I don't want to hear from them, that I don't want them to, be able to vote the way they want. And that certainly isn't the case. But the question came up several times during my little meeting, well, what's next? What's going to happen? What do you mean? Isn't this about maps? Didn't you go there? Aren't you going to talk about the maps? I was like, no, not the maps. But that is still the question. And so, as you know, I'm very passionate about the Eastern Shore, grew up there, and certainly, firsthand my thoughts and feelings on it. But what I did ask yesterday during the hearing in our committee, one of the witnesses, and I said, well, have you thought about the fact that, dilution of the funding that comes to rural communities is really important? And I feel like that if we move the needle to the map that was proposed during our main session, that is the potential outcome, that we will lose funding. We could lose potential representation. And certainly I'm not on this floor today advocating for the person who's in the seat now for District 1. Don't get that twisted. That's not the case. But I do know that the citizens in my district, they don't want to see us become an 8-0. They still want to have a voice. They still want to be able to be at the table and understand that the rural community is the rural community and it's not diluted by having suburban areas a part of it. And they did bring up the part about funding. One thing I'll just want to say is that when we are always, and I'm used to fighting, I've been fighting all my life in the neighborhood and in the halls, wherever it need to be, but it's for the purpose of people to have the voice. And I feel like, with the passage of this is just the beginning to go back and change the maps. When I look about and think about opportunities for economic drive to happen, case in point down Somerset County, it's still the poorest county in the state. And when we talk about, potentially, building another Bay Bridge crossing, my dream would be, hey, let it connect to Somerset County so we can bring some opportunity there, or let it connect to Dorchester County so we can increase the economy there. So I just want to let you know that, standing for the Eastern Shore is important for me, and it means a lot to our citizens just to be able to have a voice, but at the end of the day, they are very much concerned. And lastly, I don't believe that what's happening at this national level is going to last forever. I'm a firm believer that the same God put him in place right now and many others, they can remove him and we can be on a different trajectory. So thank you for your time, for listening, but I just wanted to say it's very important, and I know what the next steps are, but I am voting against the bill, and that was due to much research, much thought, and much prayer. So thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. And the gentleman from the Eastern Shore?
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your fairness through this whole debate with listening to all of us here on the floor. I think that You've been very fair about that.
Thank you.
And I do deeply appreciate that. You know, I haven't heard from one of my constituents that thinks it's a good idea for us to be here for this particular issue. You know, what I have heard through this summer in the various parades and the Farm Bureau picnics and things that we've gone to so far, and they're still ongoing, is there are issues with energy costs. I think top of the list is vehicle registration fees. They're really upset about that. Increasing property taxes. We're hearing a lot about the paint tax now over on the Eastern Shore, because the Eastern Shore borders tax-free Delaware. And every little thing that gets passed here in Annapolis by the General Assembly that drives the price up, increases a fee or a tax on some particular issue, just sends more people across that border to do more of their shopping. And it's a challenge for us on the shore. It really is. With brick and mortar. If you never had a border state with tax-free issues, you should try it sometimes, because it is the biggest challenge, there's no question. But people are moving. They're moving from the shore, and I'm talking about people that have been there generations. I'm not talking about new people. That's alarming, that people that have been there multiple generations have just thrown their hands up and said, I've had it. And I've had people talk to me in the last few weeks since this special session was called about redistricting that just don't understand why. They said, I just don't understand what that issue is. Wait a minute.
He said he thought he was in trouble. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. Enjoy it. Thank you for humoring us.
Thank God I was able to be the one on the microphone as our new colleague was given the initiation.
Thank you.
I better get all the handshakes later.
Okay.
And he was a good sport about it.
Thank you, sir, for
so
allowing us to interrupt you. Thank
Yeah,
you so much. You may continue.
Yeah, thank you very much. But, you know, as I look at the registered voter statistics for the state of Maryland, we've got 2,221,000 Democrats, 1,018,000 Republicans. So it's 51% Democrat, 24% Republican, 25% unaffiliated, and others. So a fourth of this state is going to get disenfranchised if this moves forward. And I think that's what really bothers us on the shore, that our voice will be snuffed out completely. And yet we represent 25, basically a quarter of the state. And so this last 2 or 3 days, I think, has been frustrating for the people. The people aren't behind this. This is not something they want us to do. All I'm hearing about is what I talked about earlier, is that the cost that everybody's facing, the reality of what it takes each day to take care of your family, and housing. You can't get housing anymore due to a high regulatory process that we're in. You can't get permits. I mean, it's just a litany of things. These are the priorities of Maryland, not redistricting. And to disenfranchise 25% of the people of this state, I think it's just the wrong direction that we're even considering. There's a multitude of things that we should be dealing with for the good of Marylanders. We've got some fiscal challenges, hard winds that are coming. We've been downgraded to our bond rating. We got hard winds coming with deficits, financial deficits, and that's where our focus should be. That's not what we should be talking about in the special session. So You know, I can't vote for this bill on behalf of my district because we're going to get disenfranchised, and I think our voice is a very important voice in the mosaic of the population of Maryland. Thank you.
The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 96 votes in the affirmative and 38 votes in the negative, House Bill 2100, having received a constitutional majority, is declared pass. We have now Senate Bill 426, message from the Senate. The clerk will read the message.
Ladies and gentlemen of the House of Delegates, the Senate today, notwithstanding the objections of the governor, voted to override the veto on Senate Bill 426. Said bill is sent to you for your consideration.
Hearing no objection, the message is ordered journalized. The clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 426, Public Information Act, Divorce Records. Item number 1.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass, notwithstanding the objections of the Chief Executive? A green vote overrides the governor's veto. 85 votes are needed. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Will anyone like to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 134 votes in the affirmative and 0 votes in the negative, the veto is overridden. Message to the Senate. The clerk will read the message.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, the House of Delegates has voted to override the governor's veto of Senate Bill 426, 2026 regular session. Said bill is returned to the Senate herewith, having been enacted under Article 2, Section 17 of the Maryland Constitution.
Hearing no objection, the message is adopted. This ends the work of the desk for now. Committee announcements, appropriations.
No meetings, Madam Speaker.
Economic matters.
No meeting, Madam Speaker.
Environment and transportation.
No meeting, Madam Speaker.
Government, labor, and elections.
No meeting.
Health.
No meeting, Madam Speaker.
Judiciary.
No meeting, Madam Speaker.
Ways and Means.
No meeting, Madam Speaker.
Subcommittee announcements. Seeing none, delegation announcements. Seeing none, caucus announcements. Seeing none, personal guest announcements. All right, seeing none, quorum call, please.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their presence? The clerk will take the call. There being 134 members present, the House is still in session. Recognizing the majority leader, please listen up.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
I move that the House stands recessed until Tuesday, August 4th at 3:30 p.m.
3:30 p.m. 3:30 p.m. Thank you.